Hey, today's guest is Chris Botting. He's been a general manager, a CPO, a COO, a CEO, a man of many talents, and exceptional global technology leadership pedigree. Chris, you're known for scaling businesses, building high-performing teams, and just being a top talent in product and go-to-market innovation. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Elizabeth. Good to see you.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, you have done a lot of things. Can you please tell us a little bit in your own words? What do you do? What do you love about it? And what sets your soul on fire about it?
So what I actually love about all this is understanding what a customer needs, what their problems are, which if you do it really well, you actually know what their problems are before they realize it and go in and solve it. Whether it's product, I'm a product person, I love products, but whether it's go to market, it's pricing, it's whether it's supportive, whatever it is, help customers understand what their challenges are and provide them a set of solutions or a plan on how you're going to get to that solution. Started this when I was very young on a paper route, actually. So first thing I learned is if I put the paper where the customer wanted the paper, I get a nice tip. Good start.
Instant feedback. Love it.
Yes.
Awesome. Christy, we talked a little bit before the show, and you have this really great way of phrasing how a customer can be looking at their long-term goals and balancing that with their short-term execution, and you call it strategic backlog. Can you dig a little bit into that concept?
Certainly. You and I were both at Cisco. We understand the VSEM approach, right? Vision, strategy, execution, and metrics. What is your vision? What is your strategy? How are you going to execute it? And how do you measure yourself against it? Terrific framework. Where I found it a little bit short is how do you work the balance in between the vision and the strategy and the execution? Okay. So an easy way to describe this is, let's say you grew up on a family farm. Small farm, you're selling your produce through your farm stand or whatever, and you have a nice lifestyle growing up. But when it's your turn to take over the farm from your parents, you've always wanted to grow it. You want to sell to grocery stores or whatever. So you have this nice, very compelling vision. But you take over the business and you're new and you need to figure out that how do you run this farm on a day-to-day basis? So you're out every day plowing or weeding or sowing or reaping or whatever it is you need to do on a day-to-day basis for your farm. So that's execution. And your metrics, I got a nice yield per acre and whatever your metrics are. In the back of your mind, you have this vision of really growing dramatically. Okay. So what's the gap? The gap's the strategy. So you start thinking about, I want to grow. I need to get more acres. I need to get more people. I need to get more mechanisms and automation to that process. And how am I going to do that? That's where your strategy comes into play. So you start thinking about, I need to buy another 100 acres, whatever it is. I need to buy a much larger tractor or have these big milestones. And these are like a company that says, I need to do an acquisition to bring in new technology and talent. I need to get more funding in a couple of quarters because we're driving towards profitability or whatever it is. But you're busy. You're growing crops all day long. So what is your strategic backlog? It's how you make time for these big strategic things that can drive a 10x performance improvement while you're managing to get all these other things done. So maybe to make time for that, you don't do one of your activities quite as often. You do the weeding once a week instead of going to the rows and doing it twice a week or whatever. But you have to free up time. So in a company, you take these very large items are tracked at a CEO level or a C level, and it may be an acquisition, it may be increased funding. So you have a team that goes off and does your funding work. But then if you're doing an acquisition, maybe you need more product things put in place in advance of being able to acquire someone. You need some additional APIs. You make space in your product backlog for that. You don't want to make space this week and surprise the product team and the sales team that customer X is going to buy the product. They're not going to get what they thought they were getting this week. You can't do that. You have to plan this out quarters in a row and quarters in advance and start slotting in. We need a week worth of API development on this topic, and that gets slotted into the backlog so that when all the other pieces of the activity are ready, that piece is already done. Right? So you don't want to go in and just do a massive disruption and blow everything up. You can do that once in a while, but after a while, your teams are going to get frustrated because you have people that are on product backlog, as an example.
Yeah.
You don't want to keep overriding them. You'd rather slip into the process and insert. That takes planning.
I like this idea of the strategic backlog. And you didn't even know, Chris, that I did grow up on a small family farm.
I didn't know that.
So your analogy does resonate. I love the idea of strategic backlog and looking at it that way, because this is where I spend a lot of my time and focus in consulting is working with clients who know they need to innovate, but they're running 100 miles an hour currently in execution. And how do you balance those two worlds? It's a hard challenge to. In your work with customers, what do you see as one of the biggest hindrances to really embracing this idea of a strategic backlog?
Hindrance from the customer perspective? Or
Yeah.
From the perspective? So actually, I found the opposite. So we had this experience, oddly enough, at Cisco.
Okay.
And we realized that we needed to do some transformational things to the product. And we built out a plan for that. And we went to our top customers and shared the plan. So you're not going to get what you thought you were going to get on the timeline you thought you were going to get. And obviously it's phrased a little bit better than that, but it's the idea of being transparent and authentic and open with them. And then then of course the eyes open up. Here's the reason why we're working on doing this. And when we get to that point, you're going to have all these other sets of capabilities. Your time to value is going to be dramatically faster. You're going to have a much more robust product, much more scalable product. And once they understood and had the opportunity to say, that's great, but you're working on 5 things for me. I really need this one, but the other 4 can wait. Then all of a sudden they're bought into the backlog. They have ownership of the backlog. So you evolve from a client vendor relationship to more of a trusted partner, trusted advisor kind of relationship, which is much more valuable for any large customer or any customer.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. What about the other way for the company? What's the biggest resistance you've seen there?
The biggest resistance is we have commitments for the next 9 months or the next 12 months or whatever. Okay, so let's go through each one of those commitments. Okay, I see you have a customer that's in a precarious situation because their system's fragile. We need to fix that. We have a customer that wants to have feature X, and feature X applies to 80% of our installed base. We need to prioritize that. We have a customer that needs feature Y, and feature Y only applies to them, and it's not really going to bring any incremental revenue. And let's have the conversation with them and see if they can wait a couple of months.
Yeah.
So you just have to be careful and think through it and just be cerebral about it. But again, you want to engage, especially if you're going to decommit or delay a commitment. You need to work that from a product perspective. You need to work that with your sales team, your sales engineering team, your product management team, your engineering team, and of course, make sure your leadership team is aware that these are the proposals of what we're going to go do. Are you cool with that? Yes. Right. And in all this, you're building up trust. You're building up information flow across the company, and people are getting more and more. Every conversation, they understand more and more about the vision. They understand more and more about the strategy, which is really good. So the nice thing about individuals and lower level leaders understanding the strategy is all of a sudden they can start understanding, I can make this decision myself. I don't need to go through multiple layers of management to get an approval because this is directly in line with the strategy.
Yeah.
That speeds up the cycle, makes the team more efficient, more effective. And it helps individuals at any level grow their careers.
So you've obviously had a successful career doing this again and again. And it's something that I'm sure you've perfected your own approach and technique over time. If you were able to go back and tell your younger self something, or perhaps something you do now in coaching other people who are building up in this field, what is some wisdom or advice you would give someone at an earlier stage in their career?
To give advice to myself, there's probably 4 or 5 stocks I would have bought a long time ago.
Okay, that's cheating. Wouldn't we all?
Yeah, exactly. But no, it is to reach out and have these conversations. Do more math. I've been involved in so many emotional conversations. And I'll tell you after the call exactly who this was, but I worked for one gentleman who ran our business unit for a short while when I joined it. And his almost exact quote, this is probably 20, 25 years ago, there's a lot of emotion in these conversations. If you can get that person to put their emotion into a cell on a spreadsheet so I can read it, we're good. And you probably could guess who that is, but I'll tell you.
Oh, that's good. That's a good quote.
Yeah. And he's gone on to be on Shark Tank.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
prolific and impactful career. So very smart man.
So that brings up an interesting question of emotion and decisions can usually be very problematic, yet decisions are based on relationships, and relationships are somewhat the lifeblood of what runs a business, and relationships can be emotional. I'm not even sure what my question is in there, but I'd love to get your thoughts or perspective on how do you balance that all? Because you're trying to prioritize the relationship, but then take some of the emotion out of the heated decision making. How do you approach that?
I suspect if you went to the board or the owners of the company, they would be less focused on the emotions and they'd be more focused on what's the financial outcome. At the end of the day, it's profit and loss and what's the return on the investment dollars. The emotional aspects of it are up to the individuals to manage that. So I just did an analysis. You can see it. I posted it on LinkedIn yesterday, and it's my very first Substack as well.
Nice.
Pulled an anonymous public company, and they had 23% of their revenue came from one customer, and the other 77% came from the rest of their client base. And the analysis was around if they defected, what's the impact? Obviously, because it's such a large company, large customer, their revenue would take a hit. But what about cost of goods improvements? If I did a cost of good improvement over here with the 99 companies as opposed to the one very large company, what's the net effect? The net effect is dramatically larger if you do a 1% cost improvement across the 99 than on the one. So all this emotion is you don't want to upset the one, but so we need to do everything for them. And if we can find a cost improvement for them, let's do it. It's the emotional response. The analysis came out in this example. You're actually dramatically better. And it was all fictitious numbers I put in my model, but it was 3 times more cost effective to do the cost improvement across the base as opposed to the one. So that's what I mean when I said earlier, just do a little bit more math.
Yeah.
And take your assumptions and put them into a financial model. Also, I've come up with a way that I've not seen done elsewhere before for tracking products and product commitments. We used to have what was called like a product plan, right? Strategic plan for a company. And it would be a 100-page document that nobody would read, right? Development and all that stuff. Make a change, you got to go and rewrite the thing and reread the thing. And that's not really effective, right? If you think about agile development and moving very quickly, but I've come up with what I call a definition of START, which is just the basic level of information to understand what your expectations are from your investment. I'm going to invest $1 million and I expect to be break even within 9 months and profitable within 12 months. That's great. How do you track it? Today, people come back 12 months later and say, you do 2 million. Did you do 2 million? No. How do you figure that out in real time? So I have an approach to that I'm trying out.
So what are you doing with that? Are you creating a playbook? Are you going to teach a class on this? How are you paying this forward?
Yeah, playbook's another topic, but yeah, I intend to do a playbook on it.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm just testing the methodology and looking for another example to try it on.
Nice. That's one of the things I like to focus on with the Cake on Tuesday podcast is people who are have done in the world and now taking that knowledge and how do we pay it forward? How do you turn the doers into talkers so that we're able to share some of that? So that's awesome. I'm glad you're thinking about creating that. That's awesome.
Yeah. So playbooks is an interesting topic, right? Playbooks is another post, right? So the reason I keep mentioning the posts is it's not about the post. It's playing it forward. I coach entrepreneurial teams. I've done some college class teachings and bits and things like that because I do feel like I have a lot to give and I want to give it and play it forward. But yeah, so on the playbooks are terrific. Every football, let's talk North American football. Every football team has a playbook. Good players know the plays. Really great players can read the situation in real time and adapt in real time.
Yes.
Right? So playbooks are rules of thumb. And there's this emphasis on we did it this way last time. That's great. And I'm glad that was successful, but this time is not last time. Things continue to change in the world.
Yeah. Okay. To that point, if you have a playbook, here's the ideal. Here's how we want it to go. But then every case is different. If you're working with a company or working with a customer and it's apparent that they are not focusing on the strategic backlog, they're not prioritizing for their long-term success, what are some of those key indicators that, okay, we need to talk about strategic backlog? And do you have any good stories to illustrate that?
I don't have any good stories that I can share.
Okay. Which means you have good stories. Okay. I'll have to talk to you later.
Yeah. The indications are a little bit on the obvious side, really. Like, there have been no major innovations over the past 5 years, and 5 years is a
Mm,
tremendously long time. You take out the recent awareness around AI and all the things it can do, and I say recent, past 2 years, year and a half, right? But if you look at a company and the growth is stagnant, there are, what's causing that? Do you not have enough salespeople? Do you not have the right messaging, the right positioning? Are you not taking enough innovative steps? What's going on as you start to diagnose that? And in conversations, what have you done to try and do it to 10x? 10x is an arbitrary number. That's the one Google uses. If it's good enough for them, I'm fine with it. But
mhm.
what are the big things you're trying to do? Oh, okay. When did you promise that to the board or to your teams that it's going to be done? Well, was it done on time? No, what happened? And you start peeling the onion, right? And there's 1,000 reasons why things don't happen. But once you have those conversations, you can start to see that it's just not getting enough attention or whatever the root cause is. You have to get the root cause. Treating
Yeah.
symptoms, it's good for now, but it doesn't work in the long term.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is very insightful, Chris. I do want to give people a minute to know where to find you and follow you and learn more. But before we get to that, is there anything you wish people knew more about your industry, specifically product and go to market? Oh, if people knew, this would make things easier.
Oh my gosh. Um, so I'm a pretty down to earth person. It's listening. It's probably
Mm,
primary, right? The old expression, got 2 ears and a mouth. Use them in the right proportions. It's respect for each other. It's learning. It's cultural awareness. At the end of the day, there's very few things that any of us do by ourselves, especially in a company. It's all a team sport, right?
100%.
And if you
Hmm.
want to be on the team, you need to be part of the team.
That's a good quote right there. All right. Thank you, Chris. Where can people find you if they want to learn more and keep an eye out for this playbook you're creating?
Yeah, the easiest way is on LinkedIn. So it's Chris Botting, Botting, and you'll see a picture on there that looks like me. And
And we'll put a link in the show notes too.
that sounds great. And I'd love to connect with people and perhaps have some conversations.
Awesome. Chris, thank you so much for being here. Thanks everyone for listening.
Thanks so much, Elizabeth.